Yes, I'm Batman.
I'm Batman.
I'm Batman, Alfred.
I'm Batman.
I am Batman!
I'm Batman. I'm Batman.
Greetings, Bat Family. Welcome back to Holy BatCast, brought to you by Real Fans for Real Movies. Please visit our website, holybatcast.com. It's your one-stop shop for everything Holy BatCast. You can also find us all over social media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. It's just Holy BatCast. Search for us. We are also on Patreon, so if you'd like to support the show, help keep it rolling, we are on patreon.com/holybatcast. And as always, the biggest of shout-outs to our patrons. You guys are amazing. We love you. We couldn't do it without you. So we know you don't have to do what you do, but you do it anyway because you know why? You're awesome, just like Batman. So thank you for that. Again, that's patreon.com/holybatcast. We are a proud part of the Real Fans Podcast Network, so if you want to check out some other shows, you can check those out at rf4rm.com. As always, I'm your host, Andy DiGenova. Hello. And if you want to follow me on Twitter or on Instagram, it's just my name, Andy DiGenova. Now, this episode, we are going to be celebrating the nuptials of Batman and Catwoman by reviewing Batman number 50, The Wedding. We're also going to look at the next episode of the new Batman Adventures and then wrap up answering your questions in the Wayne Manor Mailbox. Joining me, coming back from the dead and doing the Thriller dance in the meantime, it's my buddy Jamie Drewley. Hey, Jamie.
I look amazing in a red leather jacket, people. Amazing.
Yeah. There's no doubt. There's no doubt. So you're rocking it, and it's just good to hear your voice.
It's good to be back. That was kind of a weird week off for me. I mean, it wasn't anything intentional because although I'm avoiding the internet, I'm not trying to actively avoid podcasts at the moment. So thankfully that little shrimp on the Barbie could step in for me and make sure things stayed on schedule. So thanks, Brendan. I appreciate that.
Yeah, fortunately we can drag him out long enough to fill in if need be. So, but don't worry, it's still your job. We're not.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that job
away.
Security. I like that.
Yeah.
Did I get docked pay for that last week, or is
you
that...
You did. 20%. 20%. And unfortunately, Brendan cannot join us for this episode. It's too bad. He's unavailable because he is actually out celebrating the birth of a brand new baby niece.
Nobody wait for a punchline to that. He's dead serious. It's truthfully, Brendan has a new niece that was born this week. So, Brendan, congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations, Brendan, on the new niece. And it's, I mean, there's a lot of responsibility with being an uncle because not only were they there for the birth, but now Brendan is busy building a dingo-proof fence around the niece's crib. Which is a very real problem.
That's very funny.
In those parts. So the best
the dingo ate your baby.
Maybe the dingo ate your baby. So yeah, congratulations, Brendan, and your new baby niece. Give her bat kisses from us, but the show must go on. And fortunately, Jamie's alive for another week, which is exciting.
I like being alive. It's kind of cool.
It beats the alternative.
Oh, and speaking of alive, Julian Chan, Andy shared that little Photoshop job meme that you did. I'm still, my ribs are not going to recover from that for weeks, man. So well done.
It was pretty amazing.
Yeah,
it was good. I'm not going to lie.
I sent you that little shout laughing sticker, and I literally was shout laughing as I was sending it to you because I could not stop. So yeah, that was a good one. Well done, Julian.
Yeah. So one of our listeners, Julian Chan, he put together this little photo of. It's like a statue, a bust of Jamie, and it says, if you seek his monument, look around you, and then a little Photoshop of me spray painting false god on it, which was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that was well done all around.
It made our days and so many others who saw it.
I'm sure.
Anyway, let's talk about the week's big event. Without further ado, it's time to dive into Batman number 50, The Wedding.
Yes, let's.
So Batman number 50 is out. Batman and Catwoman are married now. Woo! Congratulations! Yeah. Pop the champagne.
We're
Celebrate.
we're popping bottles in celebration of what went down in this book.
We are.
At least I am.
So, I should put out the spoiler tag. If you have not read The Wedding, we're going to speak freely about it. So if you don't want to be spoiled, go check it out. It's a momentous occasion. Not a monument. I don't think that's a real thing. It's a momentous occasion. So you want to pick it up, especially if you're a collector, because we are going to speak freely. But before we talk about Batman number 50, they made a big event out of this. And so there were a bunch of crossovers and things. There were these preludes to The Wedding issues. Jamie, did you check those out?
I did. I tried to stay as current as I could with everything so that I could hit the ground running with this book when it came out and wasn't lagging behind or get anything spoiled. So yeah, I got all of those so-and-so versus so-and-so prelude to the wedding tie-ins, and obviously read especially the last 2 or 3 issues of the Batman main title that this was being published in, which, you know, obviously led into things. So I stayed current on all of it. I wasn't impressed by a bit of it. But nobody's surprised by that, I'm sure.
I did too, though. I'm going all in. I'm getting every issue. So yes, I got all the prelude spin-offs, whatever you want to call them. And then of course I always buy the Batman book anyway. So it was I think it was 48, 49, and then 50, as well as I think it was 5 prelude books.
I think that's right. There was at least 4 there, but I think 5 is right though.
Yeah. So, I got all those, and then of course leading up to Batman number 50, and then they're saying that Catwoman number 1 is also part of the event. I have not picked that one up yet, so I still need to do that. It
is basically like the direct sequel to number 50. So obviously, in fact, if I'm not mistaken, there is a variant cover. I was there picking up my comics at midnight on the day before release because I couldn't pick them up on 4th of July because, bless my comic book shop, they don't work on holidays, but he made sure he was open for an hour the night before so that everybody could come in and get their stuff. And I went and got mine picked up because I didn't want to wait until Sunday to get my books because that would essentially put me a week behind my reading. And as much reading as I do, that's not acceptable for me. So I was there at midnight, not because I was excited for this book, because I wanted my comics for the week. So the guy that was behind me in line, because I was first, because I'm cool like that, he asked for a Catwoman number 1 because he keeps some of the books under the glass case right by the cash register. He's like, oh, I didn't realize that this was coming out so soon. He's like, yeah, it came out, today. And he's like, okay, well, I'll take that too. He's like, well, read this cover because it tells you that, hey, you don't read this book until you've read Batman number 50. So apparently there was a variant cover where Catwoman's telling the readers, don't open this book until you've read number 50. So Catwoman number 1 is essentially the direct sequel to it. However, there is really only like a panel or 2 that truly reference what went down in Batman number 50, which we can talk about that later if Andy wants, or I can leave that go so that he's not spoiled by it.
It's okay. I'm fine.
Okay.
So, yeah, before we get to Batman number 50, I will pick up Catwoman number 1. I'm committed. I've gone this far. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to see what happens next. But
I will say this for Catwoman number 50. Most of you know from listening to me rant, rave, and whatever it is that I've done in the past that I'm trying not to do anymore. I'm not a huge Catwoman fan. I really don't care at all for the way that Tom King writes Catwoman, especially. However, Joelle Jones, who has been the artist for Tom King on a number of these books leading up to The Wedding, who I'm a big fan of her work. I think she's an excellent artist. She is writing as well as drawing this Catwoman series. And I think she's doing a very good job. This is some of the best Catwoman stuff that I can remember in recent memory. So I would definitely recommend picking this book up.
Cool. I will. Anyway, but let's talk about the preludes to The Wedding, since
do we have to?
I mean, not in great detail, but just in general, we can talk about them because
right.
it's the overall event. So yeah, the way they did these preludes is it was hero versus villain, and then they chose 5 random, not team ups, but random fights, if you will. So the first one was Damian versus Ra's al Ghul, and I might get the order wrong, but so be it. Then it was Nightwing versus Hush. And then I think it was Batgirl versus Riddler. And then it was Red Hood versus Anarchy. And then finally Harley Quinn versus the Joker.
I think you hit it just right. I think that was the exact order, if I recall.
Woo! Good memory. Not dead yet. So, for me, I actually enjoyed 2 of them, I'd say, but the other 3 I really didn't. So they're not required reading. I guess I'll say that. So
no,
they tricked me and going, oh no, this is all the ones you need to buy for the wedding event. And so I bought them all, and then I read the preludes, and some of them, like I said, I kind of enjoyed, but at the same time, like, they don't give you anything that you need other than the fact that the Joker is staking out this wedding, which you already knew. So
right.
It's not, they don't give you any information that you really need, but it's kind of fun to see the different battles, team ups, whatever you want to call it. It's just some of them I think are a little weirder than others, and I enjoyed a couple. So what were your thoughts?
I knew I was in trouble right off the bat because I was excited as could be for the Damien versus Ra's al Ghul. I mean, surprise me.
Right.
And I read that one and I was just kind of like, eh. So I knew I was going to be maybe in trouble with the rest of them because I think most, if not all of them, were written by the same writer.
Yeah, they were all Seeley.
Tim Seeley, was it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think they were all Tim Seeley. But it's weird, though, because they read like different writers. Because, again, some I thought were just a little more compelling, and then others were just really bizarre. Like the Damien and Ra's al Ghul one, I think I was 3/4 of that through that one going, is Ra's al Ghul even in this? Because it was like Damien fighting... he was like fighting a alternate version of himself, or who the heck was he? It was some like it's been a few weeks since I read it. Who the hell was he fighting? It was
I don't even remember. Honestly.
I want to say it was like an alternate dimension Damien or something. And then
it could be. It was so memorable for me that I put the book in the box and never thought about it again.
Yeah.
To be quite honest.
I mean, at least the other ones I've read recently, but that one I read again when it first came out, and so I'm even fuzzy on it. But I was just reading it, being like, what the hell does this have to do with the wedding? And where's Ra's al Ghul? So yeah, that one did not thrill me, just because it was really bizarre. Nightwing versus Hush, I thought started really solid because it was Bruce, Nightwing, and Clark out for the bachelor party, which I thought was cool. And then Hush shows up, and then he and Nightwing get sucked into this weird, bizarre dimension.
Yeah, that one took a weird step at one point, and it just never recovered from it.
Yeah, at the beginning, I was into it. I was like, "Oh, cool! Bachelor party crashed by Hush. Okay, that's kind of fun." And then they go through a portal and end up in this weird universe with faceless ghosts, and you're like, "Wait, what just happened? I'm so confused."
Yeah, even the motivations and such for Hush, I thought were solid enough in that. It's just
exactly,
the completely unnecessary shift in that book, just like I say, it threw me off, and I just never quite recovered from it. I didn't hate any of them, but none of them are books that I really plan on ever needing to read again, if I'm being frank.
Yeah, like exactly. I love the idea of Hush was Bruce's best friend. Now Dick is essentially Bruce's best friend, and there's that jealousy, and you took my friendship from me, and because Hush is very entitled anyway. I thought that was a good idea. I just wish they hadn't gotten sucked into some weird magical alternate dimension, because it just seemed like an odd place for this to go down.
I mean, it's comics, so I can accept that sort of thing. It's just at some point you have to wonder, why was that necessary?
Right.
And maybe there is some hidden, deeper meaning to it that I just didn't quite latch on to. But yeah, it didn't do much for me.
Yep, me either. So that was weird. And then Batgirl versus the Riddler. This was my favorite one.
That was probably the most enjoyable of the bunch, but it still wasn't something that I thought to myself, yeah, that was worth, $3 or $4, whatever it was.
Yeah, it wasn't amazing, but I liked it, so I'll give it that. I enjoyed that because it was what you expected. It was the Riddler sending the Batgirl on this puzzle quest to solve all these riddles to save all these people, and that's what you want a Riddler Batgirl thing to be, and so that worked for me. I was like, okay, great, that's what it should be.
Well, wasn't this the one, and I read enough books that sometimes it does get hard for me to keep track of what I saw where. Wasn't that the book where they were kind of doing the meta poking fun of why does he have these sideburns and looks like the Lucky Charms guy and all this other stuff?
No, that happened later.
Leprechaun look, or
yeah, I want to say that happened in Joker versus Harley, where they started making fun of the sideburns.
It was either one of those two books, or it was Batman 49 when Catwoman and Joker were laying down in the church.
It could have been that. Yeah, it could have been that too.
Okay. Anyway, so I could really take or leave that look for Riddler. So the fact that they were making fun of it was like kind of snickery to me, I guess.
No, I agree. Like, I don't have any strong feelings about the sideburns, but it was funny when they poked fun at it. So at least, but yeah, for me at least, like Batgirl versus Riddler was a pretty straightforward what you would expect of those two characters, and it didn't get too bizarre. It was like, no, the Riddler has kidnapped these people. Batgirl has to solve all his riddles to save these people. At the same time, I like the idea of Riddler. Like, I liked the idea of Batman settling down, having an effect on his villains, like the Riddler. Riddler being like, hey, if Batman can find someone, can't I find someone? And maybe it's Batgirl. Like, I don't know, like that kind of cool. That was kind of a cool idea of like him getting obsessed with someone who he thinks might be worthy of him, and that's Batgirl, and putting her through these tests to see if she is worthy.
Right. And that's actually an arc that I would like to see expanded on, like maybe in Batgirl's solo title, because that would be an interesting thing to see, is the intellects of those two going back and forth. Because obviously Batgirl physically can handle herself and is, has excellent fighting prowess and all that other stuff. But I mean, if I'm being frank and honest and possibly even a little offensive, she's just not the physical threat that Batman is.
No, right.
So it makes it a little bit more of, let's say, a level playing field of her dealing with Riddler. So to me, that would be an interesting arc to pursue versus just this, single shot issue.
No, that I agree with that. Is Riddler has never been a physical threat. Batgirl isn't the physical threat that Batman is, and so it makes sense to pit their brains against each other.
Right.
So that one I actually enjoyed. And then it was Red Hood versus Anarchy, and I don't even know why I bought that one other than I'm a completist, because I don't really give a shit about either of those characters.
No, that was a really obscure. I mean, I get the idea of why Red Hood is present, because they have all of the major current Bat sidekicks involved in this.
Mm-hmm, right.
Or most of them, I should say. So I get why he's there, because, let's get his perspective on what he thinks about what's going on. But at the same time, the Anarchy stuff that Tynion did in Detective was okay. It was not my favorite of his run. And I was a big fan of that run overall, but that was probably the biggest lull that I had in that run was Anarchy. Yeah,
I completely agree.
I'm not super into him.
Yeah. Yep, I completely agree. And so, yeah, like it's a random matchup. I liked a little bit of the stuff at the beginning with Jason just being a little jealous that he's not part of the inner circle. Like, that is very Jason Todd. But as far as like him and Anarchy, I just don't care.
Yeah.
And then Joker versus Harley, which that was the other one I liked. So I liked Batgirl versus Riddler, and I liked Joker versus Harley.
It was entertaining. Yeah, I mean, it was fine. It was entertaining. I kind of enjoyed the way Harley was written in that one, but at the same time, I've really tried not to be negative, but I mean, I just have to say what I feel about it. That one really felt like a cash grab to me.
Oh, just because those are two
characters who never even showed up. Yeah, it's just. I don't want to criticize it because they didn't show up in number 50 or anything, because there's a lot of people absent from number 50 that I expected wouldn't be. But anyway, that one just felt like these two are a hot commodity these days, so let's make sure we get them out there in the forefront.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Like I would have been more interested in at least one of these books dealing with other members of the Justice League. The people that I guess you could say know Batman best outside of the mansion, if that makes any sense. So like have a Superman dealing with, maybe having a conversation with Lois talking about Batman getting married and how surprised he is that he's settling down, or Flash saying, maybe this is what I need to be with Iris, or You get what I'm saying? I would be more compelled to be into something like that than I would be these versus issues that they decided to go with. And that's that whole petty fanboy thing of I'm not getting what I want, so I'm going to complain about it. And I'm really trying not to complain, but I think there was a better approach to these 5 issues than what we got.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with that. I mean, I liked the battle of wits between Joker and Harley. I enjoyed that. And, seeing that she's over him, and at this point she's trying to kill him, and she thinks she's gotten the high ground, if you will, and he's still a step ahead of her because he knows her better than she knows herself. And I don't know, I like that stuff, but does it have anything to do with the wedding? Not really.
No.
And
a lot of that,
it's like a one-off as opposed to a wedding.
Right. A lot of that to me personally felt like it was a little bit of rehash of what went on between the two of them in Injustice. Which you probably still haven't read Injustice yet, so I won't talk about it any further, but anyway, it felt like, let's take some of this angst between these two and put it into continuity because people reacted well to what happened in Injustice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So I enjoyed it as a one-off story between the two of them, and honestly just kind of checking in where their relationship is right now in the comics. But is it needed for the wedding? No, it has nothing to do with the wedding.
There was also recently, I think it was like a 2-issue arc. Well, not really even an arc. It was just kind of like a one-off series that was only 2 issues long I think it was called Harley Loves Joker, and it was written by Paul Dini. And again, some of that felt a little bit rehashed from what went in there, which I guess some of it will because those two are such a damaged relationship anyway. But I like the Harley Loves Joker stuff better than I liked this book too. So
got it. So yeah, again, the only real important thing in any of these books is the fact that the Joker is appalled that he wasn't invited to the wedding, and
which just shows how messed up he really is.
Which is kind of awesome. But when you hear him say it, it makes some sense. Like, I'm the most important person in Batman's life. Why wouldn't he invite me? And I'm like, well, you kind of have a point in your own weird, twisted way. But yeah, I mean, it seems like each one just had a little beat just kind of going, oh, Joker's still on the trail. And that is what led to Batman 48 and 49. What's weird, though, is when they put the listing in the comic of like, oh, here's what you should read and here's the order. It was the order of release, but it isn't the order that you should read it in because the prequels all come before Batman 48 and 49, which I didn't realize because I read them in the order that it was listed in. And so I was like, oh, wait, now he's already there. And at the end of the last prequels when he arrives. And so now I'm reading it out of order. It's like a Christopher Nolan movie.
At least one of those books even said this takes place before the events of like Batman number 48 or whatever it was.
It may have, but yeah, I went by the listing and read it in that order, and I was like, oh wait, this isn't right, but it's fine. I'm smart enough to figure it out. Yeah. It made sense because
there were so many people that were just much like any of these event titles like Death of Superman, The Breaking of the Bat, and so on. There are people who haven't picked up a comic book in 2 decades that are going to be like, oh, Batman's getting married. Maybe I'll just go out and read this. And they want that other bait out there for people to pick up. So, somebody walks into the comic book shop and says, yeah, I want to get this Batman number 50 so I can see Batman get hitched. And a smart comic book shop will have a display case up by the cash register, which mine does, and many do, where they'll have those prelude issues, and they'll be like, well, we have these 2 that lead into that. And they'll be like, yeah, and all of a sudden, instead of selling 1 book, they've sold 6. So,
well, I do read comics all the time, and I still did it. So it's not just for the noobs. It's for suckers like me, completists. But when the preludes end, that is when Joker arrives at the church, and then that leads to Batman 48 and 49, where Joker crashes. Well, it's not the wedding, but finds Batman and Catwoman at the church, and then all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, I did not care for those issues at all. But that's me.
48 is not fresh in my memory because I read it a few weeks ago when it came out. 49 I just read last night, so that one is fresher. 48 I don't remember making much of an impression other than I like the idea of again, I like the idea of the Joker being insulted by not being invited and making it his mission to attend this wedding. I think that's great. I love that as the wild card to screw up the wedding. I think that's awesome. And 49, I actually really enjoyed, where, again, spoilers, guys, but the Joker and Catwoman injure each other. And the whole issue is them bleeding out on the floor next to each other, but having a conversation essentially about Batman and about their history together and about their dynamic. And I really liked that one. I liked 49.
I'm petty. I know I'm petty. I know this is unreasonable. I know reading comics requires a certain level of suspension of disbelief. I understand all that, and I should readily accept a lot of things. But in this case, I'm so disenfranchised with this book that I am not willing to give it any ground when I find something that I don't like or that I think is wrong about it. It just grinds into me even worse. And basically it was driving me crazy just a few pages into that book that Joker had fired that gun like 14 times and not reloaded. And then at the end of the book, it made me even madder because the whole thing was him reaching for the thing to reload the gun, which he had not had to do to that point in a revolver that holds probably 6 bullets, give or take. Mm-hmm. I was not cool with that for some reason. But again, that's petty me. That's not anybody else's problem but mine. So that really put me off in that book.
But that ruined the whole issue for you?
Yeah, because right off the bat, I was tense.
Huh.
And then everything, the dialogue exchange between them was, it didn't do anything for me. And I kept thinking to myself, I mean, Tom King is obsessed with doing this thing in these books, and I'm trying not to do it. I'm trying not to Hulk out about this. He's obsessed with doing this thing in his books where it just says at the upper left corner, later, 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 later. And how many times did it say that in this book? I mean, it was a lot.
A lot.
And I kept thinking to myself, if these two are in positions where if they move their hand, they're going to bleed out, I don't care how much pressure they're putting on them with their hand, they're going to die from bleeding out at some point anyway. So I'm not entirely sure how long I'm supposed to believe this went on, but the fact that it keeps saying later, I don't know if that means 30 seconds later. I don't know if that means 30 minutes later. I'm not connecting with what he's trying to tell me here. So I was kind of put off by that.
Yeah, I think it's intentionally vague. I mean, yes, I did think that, like, if this is ours, you're probably both already dead, but that's one of those things where I went, it's comics, whatever. Like, if you tell me they're still alive, I'll believe they're still alive. I can't, I'm not going to freak out about it. But what I liked about it was the fact that it's so easy in the current climate with Catwoman being who she is and the way Tom King writes her, it's easy to forget that she used to hang out with the Joker and the Penguin and the Riddler, and she used to hang out with these guys and conspire to take down Batman. And I like that they acknowledge that. I like that they acknowledge Joker and Catwoman's past and rivalry, and how sometimes they were at opposing sides and sometimes they were on the same side, and how Batman has affected the both of them. I liked that. I liked playing off of their pre-established relationship that it's easy to forget that they have. And so for me, that was interesting. It was interesting to hear them talk to each other like old frenemies, I guess. Not necessarily old friends, but old frenemies, like people who have a history. I thought that was interesting. I actually enjoyed it.
The concept, I think, is better than the execution, which I've said that time and time again about this particular run of Batman. So the voice of this book just does not speak to me, and that one was no exception, unfortunately.
So the Joker finally does give in, and he thinks he's got just enough time to load the gun to take out Catwoman, and then I think he passes out, I guess, from blood loss.
Sure.
And so
for a second there, I thought, is he really trying to make me believe that Joker just keeled over dead? And I was like, nah, that ain't happening.
Nah, that never happens. So they have.
Even if he did, there are 2 more of them out there, Hey-oh.
Oh, are we ever gonna do that? Is that coming up?
That's something that Johnson's going to tackle as he's coming back to writing more.
Okay, in what?
There's actually I think he's going to do a series called 3 Jokers.
Okay, I was like, yeah, when are they ever going to pick that back up?
But it hasn't been solicited or anything, so I wouldn't expect it before at least winter.
Okay.
Maybe longer.
So they really led you to believe that this Joker interfering with the wedding wasn't going to happen until Batman number 50. And it actually resolves in Batman number 49.
Which was really interesting to me. I mean, I fully expected something to the effect of, I didn't know exactly the layout they were looking for the wedding. I obviously knew they wanted to keep it small. I recognized that this was a Batman marrying Catwoman, not a Bruce Wayne marrying Selina Kyle for obvious reasons, sort of a thing. But I didn't know if they were going to have a group of friends like Justice League and Catwoman's, maybe some of her associates from throughout the years, like the Holly, whatever her name is, that showed up in number 50 here. Mm-hmm. I expected that, and then I expected the minister or the judge or somebody to say, if anybody has any objection to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace. I fully expected that to be the moment where Joker kicked open the doors and fires a gun in the air and starts going ballistic about not being invited to the wedding or some such. That was my expectation, which never comes true. If I expect it, people, it never happens. So,
I mean, I think we all were expecting some variation on that. I think
what I really wanted was for him to shoot her, but that's my vicious, horrible way of thinking. So,
yeah, but I mean, I do think that we all expected the wedding to be happening and the Joker to crash the actual wedding. That's what we thought was going to happen. But it all kind of happened just prior to that.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of get into it, if we can, number 50 is kind of a quiet issue.
That it is. That is, I think that's accurate. And the conversation that Joker has with Catwoman does inform Batman number 50. It certainly leads to what happens in Batman number 50, but Joker is absent in Batman number 50, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Before anyone emails me and being like, well, if they hadn't had that conversation. Yes, I know. So that leads us to Batman number 50, The Wedding, extra-sized anniversary issue. I have it right here. I did get the variant cover with Jim Lee's wonderful artwork in the rain. I got them both because, I'm a sucker. So... I don't know.
I got one with Batman coming out of the sky with his cape and stuff spread out with a bunch of bats behind him and kind of a orangish sunset sort of a background below him.
Oh,
I don't know who drew it off the top of my head.
I didn't even see that one, I don't think. So, yeah, I got the standard one and the Jim Lee one. And so now that it is here, Jamie, thoughts on the wedding?
Do you remember you collected books in the 90s?
I did.
Do you remember it was a big deal where they'd have like poster or pinup comics that would come out every so often, mm-hmm. and it would have like X-Men in the bathing suits or things like that.
Yes, I'll never forget the X-Men bathing suit issue.
I actually kind of like that one, but that was an age where that sort of thing really would have appealed to me.
I was gonna say I did too because I was there wasn't the internet yet, and I was a boy hitting puberty, and you took what you can get.
They knew who they were catering that stuff to. They weren't dumb.
Yeah.
So anyway, this sort of reminds me of things along those lines in that I find this to be an absolutely superb pinup book. There are splash page murals done in this book by various just outstanding artists that are worthy of blowing up into poster size and hanging on your wall, my wall, anybody's wall. Gorgeous work. It's some of the better work that you'll see in the Rebirth era, in my personal opinion. Mm-hmm. I thought the story was. You open up the book and the very first thing you see is Kite Man, and I thought, King, you bastard, do not do this to me.
Is he trolling us? Like, is that on purpose?
Exactly. It's like, stop it. Just stop trying to do that. And, it's literally one page.
Stop trying to make Kite Man happen.
Right.
Fetch is not going to happen.
Just overall, I actually kind of like this book.
Oh.
I do. I think I enjoy it more because of the end result of it, which, we're over a spoiler wall here, people. So this is your own fault if you're still here. But yeah, I can't say I'm surprised by it. I mean, it's almost something that should be expected, but I would have almost expected them to fully go through with things and then have her kind of just vanish up and leave than I would have her just leaving him at the altar, because frankly, that is kind of a crappy thing to do to somebody, where you sell them on the idea that this is a monumentous occasion, or momentous, or whatever word you want to use for it. Monumental occasion. You've got me doing it now.
Sorry.
Where you expect an event to happen, and you're buying the book under the pretense that you're going to get this event to happen. And whereas I personally would rather that it happened like this, there's a lot of people out there that I'm sure are really, really, really angry, disappointed, upset, what have you, about what went down in this book.
Yeah.
And if you read X-Men, which I don't know if you ever picked up that X-Men book that I highly recommended you get.
Not yet.
X-Men 30? You didn't get X-Men Gold number 30?
X-Men Gold number 30. I'm writing it down.
Okay. Well, I can't say anything about it now because you haven't read the book, but let's just say people have been through this enough in the last couple of weeks.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, I can totally, and I have seen it. Some fans do feel like they were bait and switched. And I think that's, I don't think they're wrong. I get why they would feel that way. I'm with you. I liked it. I didn't love it. What I did love is what you alluded to, is I loved that they called in everyone, all these all-stars, and had them each do a full-page panel of Batman and Catwoman. And so this book is packed with legendary comic book artists doing a page of their Batman and Catwoman together.
Yeah, I mean, what do we have right there on the very first time you turn the page in the book? You have the, is it Jose Luis Garcia Lopez? Is that the fellow's name?
Yes.
And that's a gorgeous rendition of that's like the original Catwoman costume, I believe. Mm-hmm. Or pretty close to it, Silver Age or whatnot. And beautiful work done there. Just gorgeous. I mean, regardless of how I feel about the relationship between these two, I can look past that and say that, even the next page, an artist by the name of Clunan, who I'm not familiar with who that is, that's a really well done. Much more simple than Garcia Lopez's, but just beautiful stuff to look at in here. It's just, for me, it's worth the $5 price tag on this book alone, just to see the artwork that is going on in these splash pages that happen, every 2 to 4 pages in the thing, because it's just gorgeous. I don't even know what other word to use for it than gorgeous.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and it was just a hell of a lot of fun as a fan to flip through and just coming across another one and another one and another one, and just seeing all these different interpretations and just all the love from these legendary comic book artists channeling these characters.
I'm sure the Frank Miller one is not very popular with most, but that might be my favorite one in the book, just because I love Frank Miller. But anyway,
I was going to ask you that, so I guess that's your answer, is of all of these, because there's a lot. Is that your favorite?
That might be what I would call my sentimental favorite. As far as my actual favorite, I'm kind of flipping through it right now to see if I really like the Tony Daniel one on the motorcycle.
Yeah, I like
but
that one
I'm
too.
a huge fan of Tony Daniel's artwork. I think the guy is amazing. So again, that might be some bias showing there over anything. The Raphael Albuquerque one is as simple as it gets, but I think that's beautiful with the little upside down inversion kiss there. Mm-hmm. Andy Kubert one's good. I mean, there's not one in here that I don't like. I mean, the only ones that I would say got shortchanged would be the ones by Tim Sale and I think it's Paul Pope. Is that? Mm-hmm. Because theirs aren't like the full splash page style. They just each got kind of like a page to do some work.
Some panels, on. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm a bit disappointed in that those two didn't get their full page layout like the other ones did, but that's being petty. The Mitch Gerard ones is amazing, with the two of them on the rooftop and their clothes are kind of scattered around with the bat signal and stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love that guy's work. He's the one that's drawing. I'm pretty sure he's the one that's drawing Mr. Miracle right now. So he's a solid artist. The Joel Jones ones is nice. I don't know that I can really pick a favorite. I mean, my favorite thing about the book, I mean, if I was going to pick a favorite thing about the book, I'd pick Jim Lee automatically because he's my favorite comic book artist of all time. But each one of them stands out on its own and does an amazing job of conveying what they're trying to convey.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I love it. It's so fun. I mean, the standouts for me are Garcia Lopez. I love his. Jason Fabok, I think, might be my favorite one. That one's
that's
just
toward the beginning, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, the two with them jumping. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, it's opposite of Frank Miller.
That is like my favorite style of Catwoman costume. So I do have quite the affinity for that. I think that's a gorgeous looking cover, or not cover, but a splash page there.
Yeah.
But I mean, even artists that I traditionally am not a huge fan of, like Greg Capullo. And don't get me wrong, people, I'm not saying Greg Capullo is not an extremely talented artist, but I'm not a huge fan of his stuff like a lot of people are. I think even his looks great in this book. I really think everybody that was called on to do one of these really brought their A game forward with it. And I can appreciate that. I think it's extremely well done. And like I said, for me, regardless of what you think of the story, it's absolutely worth picking up for those pages.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, I love the Andy Kubert one. I love the Neil Adams one. I of course love the Jim Lee one. But to your point, they're all really cool in their own way, because that's the fun of it, is seeing different takes. And I love that this book is not just the wedding, but it is a celebration of these two characters and their history together. And so all these different moments, they're throughout the history of both of these characters. And I think it's awesome. So it's essentially these pages interspersed with the main wedding story. The beginning of the issue, they decide, okay, we're going to do it at dawn. We're going to do it at this rooftop. And so it's them prepping for that wedding, interspersed with these splash pages, and these splash pages are the letters they wrote to each other for the wedding, which I did not do for my wedding. Was I supposed to do that?
I didn't.
Okay, good, because I didn't. But yeah, so I think I want to say that's a Tom King thing that he loves to do, is he likes to make you read something that you don't know what you're reading, and then he tells you at the end, so you have to reread it. So it makes sense. It's
almost not like an exclusive thing. Like that is a repetitive pattern with him.
That's his favorite thing. Is like, I'm going to make you read something that doesn't make any sense, and at the end I'm going to tell you what you read, so you have to go read it again so it makes sense.
Exactly.
And that's
for whatever it's worth, for anybody who's curious, I did actually enjoy the book more the second time that I read it, because I knew what I was reading at that point. But that's not going to get me in the habit of reading every Tom King book 2 times. I can promise you that.
Yeah, that's a little trick he overdoes, in my opinion. Anyway, so that's what it is. It's these letters that they wrote to each other and them prepping for the wedding. The other thing I really enjoyed, aside from all these different artists doing their takes, is that throughout, Selina and Bruce are in different places, and each of these places are named after an influential person in the history of Batman and Catwoman, which was pretty awesome.
There were one or two that I did not quite get the reference on, and I'm probably going to get my geek card revoked for it, but we'll get to that when we cover it. What I will say is the connective tissue in the book is not particularly solid. However, I think there are a series of moments in this book that are absolutely great, particularly with Bruce and Alfred.
Well, go ahead and say it, because I completely agree with you. That's one of my favorite moments in the entire book, is a moment between Bruce and Alfred.
Well, I mean, there are several, but like I've got it opened up here now. They're in the Conway bedroom, which I'm afraid to say I don't know the Conway reference. I'm sorry.
Don't feel bad. I don't either.
Okay.
I'm sure we could. I'm sure we can look it up.
I don't know the Englehart one either. So
I do know that name.
The rest of them I pretty much picked up on, but this page here where they're
there's a lot in there, and I could Google them all, but I haven't. So,
but Bruce is saying how much he hates the tie. They're both kind of doing the same things in their own perspective. Like Selina's upset with something about the dress not fitting exactly right, and it works out nicely at the end of that page. And then the next page is Alfred putting a tie on Bruce, which I love that Bruce is 35 years old and Alfred's still putting the tie on him.
I mean, what's the point of an Alfred if you...
That's so indicative of the relationship of these two and how hopeless Bruce is in common everyday situations. But he's saying how much he hates it, and Alfred's trying to tell him, it's appropriate, and it's too tight. How can I move? And Alfred says, every night you wear a molded leather bat suit as you perform feats of astonishment. You'll be fine. And he's like, I just don't know. I look like my father. And Alfred replies with, oh, Master Bruce, you certainly do. And that one touched me. I like that because Alfred's showing that pride that he's seeing Bruce finally going to do something that for him that makes him happy. And Alfred just loves that. And I love that Alfred loves that because this is what he's always wanted. And any iteration you've ever seen of Alfred, no matter who it might be, an actor in a show or an actor in a movie or a comic or anything else, that's all Alfred ever truly wants for Bruce is for him to settle down and be happy. Mm-hmm. And to have that Wayne legacy carry on. But I don't know that one is as much of a heartstring tug as the one later on that they have as their... First of all, that conversation that happens on the page before it where Selena is talking to Holly, and Holly sort of gives the indication of, this isn't going to work. It's simplifying it too much because she says something and Selena starts thinking about it and hadn't considered it to that point.
Oh, yes, about his misery drives. He seems to need his misery.
Again,
it's how he did what he did.
Right. Again, for fans who are reading X-Men Gold, let's all just get together and start a petition to say if you have a blonde female friend, don't talk to her right before your friggin' wedding. I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay.
Looking at you, Ileana. Anyway, the next page we have them talking about their witness and who they're going to be, because I thought there was some kind of a big deal made over who was going to be the best man, and I guess we've kicked that straight out the window now. But which the best man should have been Alfred anyway, so this works out nicely. Just the look on Alfred's face and the embrace that these two have on this page as Bruce asks him to be the witness to their union, I think is probably my favorite page in the entire book. And that's no disrespect to any of the amazing artwork that's going on in this thing, but that is the one thing in the book that damn near got me to tear up, was that moment between those two where Alfred looks at him after he asks him to be the witness, and they just embrace at that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the moment I was thinking of. The one where he says you look like your father, that's great too, but this was the great moment because there had been the setup and little tits for tats about, who's going to be the best man? Is it going to be Dick? Is it going to be Clark or whatever? And I love that here you get the perfect resolution for that, and it's Alfred, and as it should be. And so I do love what Bruce says, that since it's been the two of us since the beginning, I can't do anything without you. Really, I never could or will. It's just awesome. So, yeah, this is one of the highlights of the book.
I agree, 100%.
So, yeah, I love that moment. It's terrific. The fact that they decide they are going small. I think like you, I envisioned this bigger thing of like, the Justice League is sitting in a church, and on the other side is a bunch of criminals for Catwoman, and like, I don't know. I guess I pictured a 90s gimmick event comic,
right. That might have been just a little bit too comic cliche, but somehow that's just what I had in mind was going to happen.
Yeah, with like a foil embossed cover.
Oh God, die cut, yeah.
But so the fact that it's like, no, it's just going to be us on a rooftop. We each bring a witness, and I'll bring a drunk judge, and we'll do this thing. It actually, it worked out really nicely. So it's just not what I expected, but not necessarily in a bad way, because I did kind of like seeing the dual paths of here's what Catwoman is going through leading up to the wedding, and here's what Batman is. I'm going to interject just right there because I want to get this point out and say it. I had a friend of mine they're unfortunately divorced now, but they were planning a wedding, and they both come from divorced families, so you literally have things flying at you from four directions at all times. So she's got her mom's family and her dad's family coming at her. He's got his mom's family and his dad's family coming at him. They already had 2 kids at this point, so they essentially said, okay, we're going to go on vacation, and then we'll come back, and a couple months later we'll get married. And they went on this cruise,
and they sent everybody a letter the day that they left for the cruise. And you open the letter and you read the letter, and it says, "Dear friends and family," and so on and so forth. Long story short, it basically says, "We're getting married on this cruise, so by the time we get back, it's already done with. Don't worry. This is what we wanted to do. It's what we decided to do." And I talked to him about it. I've known this guy since I was 5 years old, so I mean, we've been close for decades. And I talked to him about it when he got back. He's like, "We were just so fed up with everything going on, everybody's input that they, certain demands that her mother had and my mother had." And he said, we just got fed up with it, and we just decided this is what we're going to do. We're going to go get hitched by ourselves. Nobody else is going to be around, and if nobody else likes it, tough crap. So I absolutely get the perspective of why they just decide, hey, let's just do this thing tonight and get it over with. Mm-hmm. And it's not because they're thinking it's some chore to get the wedding done necessarily. It's just it's the union of the two people, so it should be about the two people more than anything else. Mm-hmm. And they just did it. They pulled the trigger and did it. So I saw that perspective of these two doing that from the beginning of the book in very much the light of my friend and his wife at the time. Mm-hmm. And I liked it because when that letter got sent out, I read it and I wasn't surprised by it. I just smiled and I thought, good for you guys. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, we had a moment like that in the planning of our wedding where we were almost like, you know what? F it. This is too much. It's too much trouble. It's too much money. It's too much drama.
The pressure that you feel about it is unbelievable.
But we talked ourselves off the ledge and still had a wedding. But I get it. And especially for like, it wouldn't be Batman to do this big public thing. Like, that's not who he is. So it makes sense. To get to something I did not love about this book, and that is the two letters that they wrote to each other. All the bullshit about your eyes, and I saw your eyes, and there are flickers of white in your eyes, and you don't want them to see your eyes, and they do want to see your eyes, and I'm just like, shut up. Like, it's so annoying. It's like written like a 16-year-old girl's diary.
It's very much trying to be poetry and not
halfway through I started glazing over it because I'm like, this is just annoying me. I'm not enjoying this. This is just so freaking pretentious. Like, could we please all get a GoFundMe to get a crowbar and some Vaseline so Tom King could pull his head out of his own ass?
That was easily my least favorite part of it.
Oh my God. And especially because it's the same thing over and over and over again. Like, it's not like he makes new points. Like, it's just repetitive.
I'm sure there are people out here who appreciated it. I ain't one of them.
Oh, thank God it's on these beautiful pieces of art because I hated reading the words.
Exactly. I mean, you literally could have done the entire book with just the artwork and none of the words over it and kept all the moments of them interacting with their witness, their friends, judges, outside, Kite Man, all of that stuff. And I would have been much, much, much more enamored with this book.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you, because I kept thinking to myself, what I should just do the second time reading it, because as I was reading it, I was refreshed on how much I didn't care for that. And I thought to myself, what I should do is just go through and read it as the letter, like flip the pages until it's the part where it's the letter they've written to the other, and just read one's letter and then go back to the beginning of the book and then read the other's letter and then go back in the book and then read the moments of the book. Mm-hmm. And I didn't do that. I just read it as linear as the book presented it. And I was just like, ugh. So yeah, we're on the same page there.
I figured we would be, but you're right. Like, yeah, I get what you're trying to do. You're trying to be all poetic and deep, but really you just sound pretentious.
And I have no issue with poetry and romance and all that other stuff. I truly don't. I just don't particularly feel like this was very well done in this book.
No, it's like I said, it is repetitive and annoying. So yeah. It feels what's the right word? Masturbatory?
Okay.
On King's part. So, yeah, that was the part I was not so into. The other thing, so, I mean, we've alluded to it, but essentially Selena comes to this decision is, Batman will cease to be Batman if he is happy with me.
Which apparently she's not the only one that had that particular view.
Mm-hmm.
Leading back to some of the previous issues that we talked about.
Right. And so, Holly kind of gets that back in her head, but at the same time, Joker, similarly said something like that, and while he was bleeding on the floor, and so like this whole idea has been put in Selina's mind, and is like, if will the world be poorer if Bruce loses the drive to be Batman? And I like that well enough. I guess it's a way to keep them from getting married while still making Selina a good guy, instead of her being selfish and being like, I can't tie myself down and running off, which I think a lot of people might have expected too.
Yeah.
Because she's Selina. And so I kind of appreciate the like, oh, it's the self-sacrifice thing. What I like less is Bruce is kind of just like this lovesick puppy dog. And like, it's like, isn't he self-aware enough for either A, to be able to be married but still be Batman, or B, just be a little more realistic about the situation? But he just seems kind of clueless in all of these things, where like his letter ends with, oh, I can love you forever and learn how to love you more every day. And it's like, is this Bruce? He just seems like a little, I don't know, like a little pathetic almost.
I get where you're coming from, but at the same time, I get it, because I feel and talk to my wife differently than I do anybody else. Like, I feel differently about her than I do anybody else. I talk to her differently than I do anybody else. This sounds really sappy, stupid, or anything else. And it's because I love my wife more than I love breathing. So to me, I'm almost, I don't want to say I'm a different person with her, but I react and respond differently to her than I do any other outside force, even including my kids. As much as I love my kids, because I love my kids as much as I love breathing too, or more. But it's just a different thing between, husband and wife, or that person that you really love. I don't know. I feel like I'm being weird about this, but I think I get your point. I do get it, because I would be like that with my wife, whereas I would never speak like that to anybody else, and not even saying the language or verbiage of loving somebody else in that same fashion. Just that type of speaking. Like I feel lighter and fuller, if that makes any sense, when I'm with my wife than I do when I'm not. I don't know. I'm going to stop talking about it now because I feel like I'm being really strange. But
no, I get your point, and I do. I guess my point is just that how can Selina be self-aware and see the big picture, but Bruce is so lovesick that he can't? That just doesn't seem very Batman to me.
Fair enough point, I guess.
That's what I'm getting at. Is like I think I would have liked it better if they both came to the same conclusion and stood each other.
Now that you mention it, I think maybe that probably would have clicked a little bit better. But
like instead of him standing up there waiting like a loser.
This is the Batman book, not the Catwoman book.
Right.
So now they've got an excuse to leave Batman a little bit more damaged in the wake of what just happened to him. So yeah. King can use this, say in Batman 52 or 3, when he's fighting Mr. Freeze, and Freeze can say something about his wife Nora, and Bruce can have some kind of a flashback to Selina in that moment that's going to distract him, something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, now he's got a writing crutch that he can use with it, because he wasn't the one who was trying to dissolve the Union before it happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would have worked better for me.
I think it would have worked better for me as well. But at the same time, I don't know. Again, I don't think this was an incredibly strong issue, other than a few moments were really good in the artwork. I think that's what makes the book stand out. And in fact, I can't believe I haven't done this yet, because it's me. That last page of the book, I was like, seriously, that was necessary?
Yeah, it's weird.
I mean, it's not even an arc we're going to deal with him. I mean, I know King likes to think he's already written 100 issues in his head with this or what have you, but I saw how he wrote Bane the first time. I don't really care to see how he writes it again. So, course, you got everybody involved down there now. Like there's some giant conspiracy of all the major Bat villains that says all you have to do is get her friend to say, hey, maybe he won't be Batman because he won't be driven by his misery anymore. And all the Bat villains are sitting around Bane going, oh, that's brilliant. We never could have thought of anything that diabolical in all of our years of plotting against him. So
is that Thomas Wayne Batman?
It's somebody dressed as Batman. I don't know who.
That's weird. I don't understand that. Yeah, like Holly has that much power that by saying that to Selina, it's gonna break up the wedding.
Again,
come on.
Comic book fans have been through this enough in the last couple of weeks.
So, yeah, I mean, okay, interesting, but yeah, I mean, I guess in the end, I'm still glad that she left him at the altar for one reason or another. For me, that's still better than if they had just gotten married without a hitch and that would be it and they go off on their honeymoon. Like, at least this is more interesting. But yeah, I just wasn't in love with, I guess, Bruce's mindset
Right.
as to where it is. And again, and I get your point, and I know that other people are going to say the same thing. Oh, love is blind. When you're so in love with someone, you're not yourself. Yeah, I get that. I get all that. We're talking about Batman, you know? So,
well, and the other side of that coin is a lot of people could probably make a pretty solid argument, and I don't know that I would present much contest to it. Batman is defined in that misery in the fact of his losses are what defines him almost every step of the way. In other words, losing his parents are what caused him to become Batman. And then losing, Jason as a Robin drove him into a different place mentally. And losing Tim in Detective Comics for a while and thinking that he was gone drove him in a different way. So it's almost like, and I'm sure there's certainly others throughout, Dick leaving him to join the Titans or become Nightwing is a certain measure of loss at that point. Losing whatever romantic partners he's had at any point. All of these things help to define who he is. So why should this situation with Selina be any different? Why not experience a loss with her and have that become a defining moment in his life, career, whatever? Mm. Right or wrong, I think that's probably the pitch that a lot of people are rolling with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that. So the one thing that Tom King did say publicly, he goes, oh, this is a 100-issue story, so this is only halfway. So who knows? Maybe in issue number 100 we get the wedding part 2.
Yeah, I bet a lot of people show up.
I wouldn't put it past him. I guess let's say
I can see the solicitation and previews now. No, really, we mean it this time.
For real. The really, really, no kidding, final wedding. So, all right. Well, anything else about this issue you wanted to bring up?
No, I do recommend picking it up. I know some people out there apparently were reading spoilers and got upset and disappointed and canceled their orders and didn't bother reading it. I think it's worth your time. I truly do. I wouldn't just shut it down like that. Like I said, even if you don't like what the story is or the turnout was, folks, this artwork is something else. I mean, another level something else going on with the art in this book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I agree with you. Like, overall, I liked it. I didn't quite love it, but I liked it. So I think it's worth picking up, definitely for the art and for some of the writing, and interesting to see what happens next. But just know that it is a much smaller story than maybe you were led to believe, it being the big event, the wedding. But it's good. I like it. Buy it. You'll want to add it to the collection.
Yeah, I mean, you've all heard me say nasty things about Tom King's Batman run time and time and time again, and even I'm telling you this book's worth picking up. So,
and you can't ask for more than that.
And then pick up Catwoman #1 because I thought that was really well done too.
I shall. So there you go, Batman #50, the wedding that didn't happen, which we're not super shocked by.
Some of us are actually downright relieved by it.
But it's not over, man. It's not over. So, yeah, pick it up, check it out, and we get our Batman fix from the comics, but we also get our Batman fix everywhere, including animation. So we are continuing our journey through the new Batman adventures, and we're going to take a look at the next episode, which is Something about back scratching. What is it? It is You Scratch My Back.
Welcome to this episode of Holy BatCast.
Yeah, this actually worked out well because just talking a lot of Catwoman. So this is a very Nightwing heavy episode of the new Batman Adventures. We've got Nightwing and Catwoman shows up, starts helping him out, and they form an uneasy alliance. The whole time, Batman and Batgirl do not trust Selina and know that she's up to no good, so they're keeping tabs on this little partnership. And surprising no one, once Nightwing and Catwoman end up finding this emerald, of course Catwoman double crosses Nightwing. Batman and Batgirl are there to swoop in and help not only fight the bad guy with the hook, who I'm sure had a name but I already forgot it, but also go after Catwoman. So thoughts on You Scratch My Back, Jamie?
I thought it was a reasonably decent episode. Not my favorite by any sense of the means, but there was nothing egregious about it or anything. I had some entertaining moments. I like the involvement of Batgirl. Anytime Batgirl shows up is usually a pretty good day for me. I'll take that moment to say I love how Batgirl kicks everybody's butt and then smiles about it in every episode she's in. I think that's fantastic. Nightwing tried to branch out, do his own thing. I get that, but that seems to be almost a defining trait of Nightwing in so much of what I'm reading lately and what I've saw in this episode. So it's fine. I get it, but it's not my favorite thing to focus on. Catwoman obviously is not my favorite thing to focus on. I'm not sure I'm crazy about the aesthetic of Catwoman or Nightwing's hairdo for that matter.
Aw, the Nightwing mullet.
Hey, I had a mullet in the
get
90s
it
too, but mine grew
glory.
out instead of down. So, I thought the episode was fine. I would actually go so far as to call the episode good, but it's not something that I'm going to rush back to watch again anytime soon.
Yeah, I really like this one because it's Nightwing heavy. I love Nightwing. I like that it's essentially a Nightwing episode with supporting parts for Batman and Batgirl. So this is a time where you're getting a lot more Batman Batgirl team ups, which is super fun. But I like that we're checking in on Nightwing and his independent career and how Batman and Batgirl can't quite let him go off on its own, and that causes just a little more drama between them. And then Catwoman being that extra wild card in there where Nightwing, well, we think he wants to trust her, and they create this partnership. And I always enjoy when shows like this take two characters that don't have a lot of interaction and team them up to see what happens. And so to have a Nightwing Catwoman episode is a little off the beaten path in a good way. I liked seeing the dynamic between these two characters, especially now that Dick Grayson is grown up. And what does she say? He's not a boy wonder anymore. He's a man wonder. Which I thought I found amusing. And I like Catwoman sinking her claws into Dick. And at the same time, playing with the Batgirl Dick Grayson romance and Batgirl's jealousy. And there are a lot of cool things going on here. I enjoyed watching it. I enjoyed Batman thinking he knows better, as always, and not trusting Nightwing to do the right thing, because Batman's got those trust issues, and that's pretty fun. And then to see that, Nightwing is smarter than maybe we gave him credit for, and he was prepared for that double cross all along. So, I really like it. The only thing I didn't really like was this random hook villain guy.
Yeah, they could have pulled something better out of their behinds with that.
Yeah, it's just kind of random where you're like, oh, okay, I don't know who this is. But the dynamic between Batman, Batgirl, Nightwing, and Catwoman, I think, is all really strong. I like all that stuff.
Yeah, that's fair. I will take this moment to say that as Batman's having his solo discussion with Catwoman and he tells her, I don't trust you, all I could think to myself was, well, it appears animated Batman is smarter than comics Batman.
I did think that too, because we're talking about these two things so close to each other, and I guess it goes back to what I was saying, is man, Batman sure is trusting of Catwoman in the comics, and here this is more the Batman Catwoman dynamic that we're used to, of I like you, but I don't trust you, and I know that you've always got your own motives. So it was almost refreshing and old school to go to this episode in the midst of the wedding.
Yeah, I agree. And in this episode's defense, I sound like I'm being down on it. And I'm not, because I did like it. It's just not my favorite. The way it wraps up, where it really feels like Catwoman's been one step at everybody the entire time, but then, you kind of give yourself that little bit of a facepalm because you're like, well, of course Batman is one step ahead of her yet. So I did like the conclusion with that. Yeah,
I agree. I thought that was great. And I mean, and they do a good job of putting you in Nightwing's shoes, where even you kind of go, well, maybe Catwoman's all right. Maybe she's okay. And then, of course, she's after something for herself.
It's like they're throwing those breadcrumbs out there to you. He initially thinks on their first outing together that, she turned her back and ran or left him be or stabbed him in the back, whatever. So they try to make you believe it through and through. And then it does eventually reach that point where she does keep staying at his side and having his back throughout the entire thing. And then, they just have that one moment as she's smashing open these artifacts, these statues, whatever they are, to retrieve this emerald that she stole and find out that, she's had this emerald that she couldn't figure out how to get back into the country, which, that's whatever. That's MacGuffin or whatever you call it. Anyway.
It's just a little plot contrivance.
Yeah. So, I mean, at that moment, okay, she's still really Catwoman, and she turns on him, and, she tries to get him, say, hey, we can go wherever we want, do whatever we want with this thing, if we cash it in. And, he obviously isn't going to do it. And you have to believe that she figured that he was going to respond that way. So I don't know. To me, that felt more like Catwoman than what I've been reading most of lately. Like, Catwoman, the solo series that just started, feels like it's going more towards that Catwoman again, which I appreciate. So I like the idea. I mean, this is me, my personal taste. I know everybody's are a little bit different. I prefer Catwoman as a villain more than I do as a hero or a redeemed villain. So this episode worked for me on that front, at least.
Yeah, I get that. That makes sense. The other thing that was a little odd that just I'm not used to seeing is Nightwing with his glider wings.
That felt a little Spider-Man 2099 to me, but that's,
Yeah, it's just not something that, like, it never really took with that character. So when he did it, I was like, oh, crap, wings? I mean, I guess he's Nightwing, but yeah, it's just never something they've really done a lot of, and so it just caught me a little off guard.
Did the animation look okay to you in this one?
Yeah.
Okay. There were just a couple of moments, and again, this could go back to my TV tuning or something, but Catwoman has a really pale skin tone, especially when she's in her costume in this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there were moments where it looked like her eyes and her face were like glowing, like outside the lines kind of glowing. And I thought, well, that's weird. Maybe that's just something that looked weird in the animation. And then they would go to the next panel where Nightwing's next to her, and like his chest emblem was glowing in the same way. And I thought, that's really strange. And then like the next sequence that the two of them are together, none of that was going on. So I don't know. I thought maybe it was my TV tuning at that point, and then it got to the next. No,
it could have just been. It could be on the master file or the tape or whatever. Because during the final chase, I noticed there was like a weird fuzziness about it.
The fluidity of the animation was good and everything. Just that weird glow that was going on his chest emblem and her face was puzzling.
Like that I did notice a little bit of, and I think that might just be more on the. Whatever the master of the show is, something weird there. But yeah, I noticed that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Anything else about You Scratch My Back?
No, worthwhile episode, but again, not one I'm going to rush back to watch again anytime soon.
Cool. Letter grade?
B.
All right. Yeah, I really liked it. I enjoyed it. Like I said, I like some of these episodes that are a little different. A little more focused on different characters, and so I'd go with a B+.
Yeah, we're in the same neck of the woods anyway.
Just to one up you.
All right, I'm used to
that. So yeah, You Scratch My Back, Nightwing and Catwoman together, and then moving on, the next episode we're going to review is Never Fear. Ooh, the Return of the Scarecrow. I'm down for that. But now, let's check in with you fine folks and crack open the Wayne Manor Mailbox. It's time again for the Wayne Manor Mailbox.
You've got mail.
Darren. What is a letter for me?
Maybe temporary.
She wrote a letter.
You're one hell of a messenger. This is all, Master Wayne.
All right, first message here is from Julian Chan, who made that wonderful rendering of your, not tombstone, but as your...
I got to tell you, I've told my wife right along, I don't want nothing but a pine box and a Batman T-shirt for my burial. And now I'm thinking that's what I'm going to ask for my tombstone. So
Perfect. So here is what Julian says. He says, "Hey, Andy and Brendan, rest in peace, Jamie." Says, "I know we're all super excited. Cannot wait for the release of Aquaman and Wonder Woman 1984. Let me ask you this. Do you think we'll hear the names Garth and or Calderon mentioned in the Aquaman movie? Also, I saw some footage of the Wonder Woman shoot where Gal appeared to be flying through the air in a sitting position as if she were flying an invisible jet. How do you feel about the jet's inclusion in the new movie? I never liked the thought, but I'm open-minded about it if Patty is using it." And going back to one of your other listeners' questions about the best single-issue Batman story, I particularly like a short story by Bruce Timm for Batman Black and White. It was called Two of a Kind, which was a Two-Face story narrated by Harvey himself. Bats never says a word and only appears in the final panel. It was a beautiful story full of pathos. That's all for me. Keep up the great bat work, citizens. Julian. What do you think, Jamie? Are we gonna hear Garth and Calderon in Aquaman?
I certainly wouldn't hold my breath for it, but boy, would I love it if we did.
I kind of expect to.
Really?
Yeah. Like, Juan seems to be embracing the entire Aquaman mythos, and so I would at least expect a name drop of these guys.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll open the door for that then. Yeah.
Yeah.
I certainly would love it. I wouldn't have expected it.
And then what do you think about an invisible jet in Wonder Woman 1984?
Boy, if they do it, I just hope they go just all engines forward with it and just do it and keep it and have it around.
Yeah, I think the odds are good, and I'm all for it. Like, it's such an iconic part of the character. You got to do it somehow. And yeah, I say embrace it, own it, and run with it. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I would rather it be full blown. We've got the invisible jet and she's going to fly around in this son of a gun for 2 hours, or no, there ain't going to be no invisible jet. I don't want this to be a little bit of a nod or a joke about it or anything like that. I mean, I not that it'll have any great effect on my affection for the film one way or the other, but that's how I see it. I would rather it not be there or just be full blown invisible jet. I just don't want that little, hey, you can ride this invisible jet, but it's only going to last for 30 seconds kind of a thing.
Yeah, don't make it a joke. Well, and I think it was at Comic-Con 2 years ago where someone asked Patty Jenkins about the invisible jet, and she said, "I'd love to do it, but it's not in the first movie." So take that as you will.
Okay.
Next question here is from David Emerson. It says, "Hey guys, I was listening to your DC Universe podcast about the streaming service with Titans. What do you think the odds are that we would get a Superboy joining the team a couple seasons down the line? And who would you guys pick for that role? Keep up the good work. Your show keeps my sanity in check at work. Thank you." David, thank you. What do you think, Jamie? Superboy in Titans?
I think the idea is fantastic, but I'm not sure what rendition of Superboy we're going to use. I would have to believe one would go with, is it Connor?
Mm-hmm.
But then you almost have to have some sort of an involvement from Superman at that point, because a big thing with Connor is his relationship or lack thereof with Superman. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure how they play that. I mean, obviously there's good writers out there that can make anything work without Superman having to actually be present. But I would think that character would work better in that version if Superman was involved somehow or another. But I'd love to see it. And as far as who would play him, I don't have any idea, because I don't know hardly a single actor that's like under the age of 25 right now, because I'm old and crusty and don't pay attention.
And dead.
Well, yeah, I'm that too. So I have a really good excuse now.
I don't expect it. I think they have plenty of other characters to play with, and I'm not holding my breath, but if they did, I'd be all for it. I don't have a choice for who should play him either. Especially because for like Titans, a lot of the people they cast are people I've never heard of, so I'm sure this would be the same, as they would find someone where, you know, I'd go, oh yeah, I think I saw a thing with that guy, but I don't have like a wish list on that, but I'd be all for it. I don't know. I just don't expect it anytime soon. Next message here's from Tom Fallows. It says, hey, Andy, Jamie, or Brendan. I was just wondering, looking at the DCEU and its critics, if you had a time machine and could go back and change something to make the reception or the movies better, what would you change? Or what Doc Brown letter would you send to Warner Brothers? Thanks, Tom Fallows. Oh, that's a toughie.
That sounds like an episode in and of itself right there.
Ooh, it sure does. Okay, Jamie, what do you think? What would you go back in time and say, hey, do this?
I made a list back when I was on that, what's that thing called? Enter something or other, when I was still on that thing. And I made this list because somebody asked me that question, because I was defending DC movies against somebody that was not a fan of the DC movies. And he's like, well, you know, what would you change going forward, you know, or what would you have changed or done differently? And my responses were, budget control is a huge thing. You know, get these $300 million movies down into the 150 range, do smaller movies, focus on what people love about the characters, and not try to do something drastically different with the characters, trying to create some new storytelling. Because as much as I appreciate that personally, and numerous others out there do, people out there maybe not be ready to experience that with most of these characters that they have out there. As far as, like, you know, you've mentioned numerous times, in fact, I brought you up in this conversation. You said that, you know, they deconstructed these heroes, particularly Superman, without giving us the constructed version of it in this universe first. And you have said right along that you feel that there needed to be another Superman movie in between Man of Steel and Batman v Superman to establish that Superman as the Superman that we know and love, versus just leaving it to the audience to understand that that's who he's been in the time that passed between these two movies, and not actually giving it to us more plainly. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I agree with that sentiment fully. I can't remember some of the other things I said. There were like 7 things I mentioned to this guy that I would have done, but I dug what we got. I mean, I've defended most of these movies right along with many of our other friends and listeners out there. But the fact of the matter is, maybe they did need a little bit more crowd pleasing out there.
Well, I mean, you just said mine, so that was easy. Is like, yeah, pause on Batman versus Superman, make Man of Steel 2, and make a Batman movie that introduces Ben Affleck's Batman, and then do Batman versus Superman. I think that is the most direct answer I can give. I mean, all your other points are valid, but if there's one thing I would change that, is like, don't rush to BVS. Get these other pieces in place first. And then I think, you know, you kind of implied it, but my other advice would be, don't overthink it. And I think that that's been an issue with the DC films, is them trying so hard to think outside of the box that it gets too far away from what people want to see.
And there's a fine line there, because the Superman Returns movie didn't get an incredibly warm reception from a lot of people, because, and I recall some of the flack that caught back when it was released. It just felt like the same thing that we've already gotten before, you know, Lex Luthor in some sort of a land scheme and all that stuff. You know, there were tweaks that I think could have made it a better movie than what we got. And I like that movie, so I'm not trying to badmouth it necessarily. I don't think it's a great movie, but I do like it. But I think there are tweaks that could have been made to make that movie more serviceable than it was, instead of trying to play the nostalgia chord the entire time. And I think that was really where that movie fell short. So I think that maybe the studio execs didn't learn the right lesson from that, and they thought, well, people don't want the Christopher Reeve Superman style anymore. They want something completely different, so let's do something completely different. And of course, the Dark Knight trilogy was a massive success for them, so they're like, well, let's do with Superman what we did with Batman. And though I may appreciate it, I'm not sure that was the right approach to take. In fact, that was another one of the 7 things I said to this guy is, don't make Superman into Batman. Superman is not Batman. They are not the same character, so you don't need to give them the same type of story or presentation. Superman is a more fantastical type of a character than Batman is, so you have to embrace that fantastical element with him and go from there with it. So again, there's a fine line that if you do too much of the same, people won't react well to it. If you do too much different, people won't react well to it. So you got to find that balance in the middle that is going to be received by, I mean, this is the ultimate goal of any studio executive greenlighting a $200 to $250 million movie. How are we going to sell the most tickets with this thing? How are we going to have the most mass appeal? No movie's ever going to appeal to everybody all the time. It's just simply never going to work because there's too many varying tastes. But how do we get the most butts in seats with this film? So I think they maybe missed the right, I don't want to say the right, they missed maybe that aspect of it in trying to make it so different or so much like the Dark Knight trilogy.
No, it's true. Yeah, Superman Returns was rejected for being too much of the same, and then Man of Steel was a little too different. So there probably was some sort of happy middle ground that they didn't quite hit. And you live and you learn. And I wasn't even talking about Man of Steel, honestly, because Man of Steel still did well. I was just thinking about some of the other choices that were made. I think the perfect example of overthinking a character is what they did with the Joker. Like, they overthought it to the point where it's like, relax, let's bring it back in, you know?
Yeah. But that's I've mentioned before, that is totally an Ayer thing. That's what Ayer thinks like. Like his characters are always gritty and tattooed and street thug and everything else. So
yeah,
I'm not sure he really has. I'm not a fan of his. The guy's talented enough. Don't get me wrong. I'm just not a fan of his because I feel like every movie of his, in some degree or another, feels the same. And I don't think Suicide Squad, but other than some of the elements of science fiction, fantasy, superhero stuff being thrown in there, was any different as far as his characters and how they were done.
Got it. All right, next message here is from Mark Jurosevic. It says, "Hey, Batcasters, thanks again for another enjoyable episode. I was thinking about the availability of DC streaming here in Australia, and I am taking the optimistic approach. I was concerned that with Star Trek Discovery accessible via CBS that we would have issues here, but I was pleasantly surprised to see it on Netflix. I'm hoping that will also be the case for Titans and Young Justice. Also, there was no mention of a Titans trailer for Comic-Con in the media release. Do you think we'll see one? Holy Bat Suspense, Mark Vell." Mark, do I think we'll get a Titans trailer at Comic-Con? Yes, I do. I absolutely do.
I can almost guarantee it at this point.
Yeah. They said we're getting a trailer for Young Justice, so Jamie can finally shut up.
I'll believe it when I see it.
And so it makes a lot of sense that it would that there would also be a trailer for Titans. So I would say yes. Next message here is from Joe K. It's Joe Kingsley. It says, "Hey, Andy, Jamie, and the Waltzing Matilda." I don't get that reference.
It's Brendan.
Okay. But what is a Waltzing Matilda? What is
like
that?
Some kind of a dance thing.
Okay. Anyway, something has flicked a switch inside me. I was lying in bed the other night, drifting off, thinking about the DC film universe, and something hit me. Have we gone mad? Are we really getting excited about an Aquaman movie? What's going on? I'm not saying I won't watch it, but we deserve so much more. We've been given such a tough time these past few years with recent releases. BVS and Justice League were such hard work given the constant rumors and behind-the-scenes problems. The answer is to keep the heroes away from a connected universe, Batman especially, and make films independent from each other. Do we really want a connected universe? We lose so much. We could get such good storylines if we don't keep trying to connect the characters. I could go on, but hopefully my point is made. I can relax now. Kindest regards, Joe. There's a lot in here. It's kind of a stream of consciousness. Are we really getting excited about an Aquaman movie? Hell yeah. Why wouldn't we? I don't understand the problem with that.
Read Aquaman. I read this. I bought this several years back. And I just reread it this past week. Is volume 1 of Aquaman in New 52. So anybody that has any question marks about Aquaman whatsoever, I think you should read this, because I read it back then and I was still pretty much anti-Aquaman and was talked into this by my comic book shop guy, because I was asking him stuff I should read, and he's like, "This is great. Jeff Johns is fantastic." And this is just as I was getting to know who Jeff Johns was through the Green Lantern run that he did pre-New 52. Anyway, I read it and I thought to myself, how was I not in love with this back then? Because it's fantastic. So it's pretty easy to get excited about Aquaman as long as you can get over the idea of him being made fun of all this time. Like there's so much meta stuff going on in that first book about him going into a seafood restaurant and ordering fish and chips, and people freaking out about him ordering fish and chips because he talks to fish and they're his friends and that sort of thing. So yeah, for me, reading Aquaman for a couple years in Rebirth now, which I think has been a really good run for the most part, it's pretty easy to get excited about it. And the fact that I'm a big Jason Momoa fan was just an icing on the cake for me. So,
yeah, I mean, I've always wanted an Aquaman movie anyway. So I'm just thrilled to be getting one because I've always liked Aquaman and the idea of Aquaman. So I don't see any reason not to be excited about it.
You've been carrying that torch long before most of us have. I can assure you of that.
Hell yeah. So I'm all for it. And, you got to think about the lack of drama that has gone on around Aquaman.
I think the fact that nobody is going buck wild on the rumors of this movie or anything else should be an indication to the studio. This is what we should do from now on, and hold on to that trailer until 5 or 6 months before it's time to go. Because it obviously built up its own level of hype with us fans sitting out here going, when are we going to get the trailer? When are we going to get the trailer? I mean, we've been freaking out for 6 months about when this thing's going to happen. So
yep.
I think this is brilliant on their part because it built up a natural level of hype. It kept most of the crap out of the tabloid journalists online and anything else. And as far as we know, the general consensus of this movie is even people who haven't been huge DCEU fans to this point are pretty excited to see what's going to come out of this because it's something so different than what we've had before.
Hopefully that is true. And then, your other point is well taken about the connected universe. I think that we're seeing more and more that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is more of the exception and less of the rule, because very few other connected universes are really working. I would say it's Marvel and it's The Conjuring. That's kind of it. And DC, I think, works to an extent, has been working well enough, but obviously not to the level of Marvel. But it does sound like the strategy over at DC Films is to be more focused on those individual characters and franchises with the option to cross over later. And I think that's it. Is like you want the option to have crossover, but they should not be a slave to the shared universe.
Yeah,
so
maybe even do smaller crossovers. Like there was talk years back, well, however long ago it was, 2-3 Comic-Cons ago, about doing a team up movie between Flash and Cyborg or something along those lines. I think maybe taking a different approach than what the folks across the street have done, do a smaller crossover like that instead of, you have singles or you have huge ones or you have cameos like Iron Man showing up in Spider-Man Homecoming or things like that. Play with that idea or, do the individual films. Obviously, we still want those. I think individual superhero films are still very much alive and I embrace that idea, but I certainly don't want the door closed on doing another Justice League film in 3 to 5 years.
Right.
Especially not with the Legion of Doom being a possibility.
I know. Anyway, we're going to do one more. I was going to stop there, but there's one more because it's specifically about Batman number 50, so I wanted to read it. This is from Brent Ellenberg. It says, time for a change. How disappointing it is that this is what we got. 50 issues that have led to nothing. Tons of buildup that led to nothing. This story started with what? Issue 25? King's stories have led to nothing. What development have we had with Batman other than every issue having two characters doing and saying the same things in side-by-side panels? Oh, touche, Brent. That's very true. No character development and stories that have no payoff for the reader whatsoever. Personally, I'm done. I'll continue to read Batman because I love Batman. He's my favorite hero by leaps and bounds, but it's sad that Batman's main title is the least favorite book I read every week. It's starting to feel like homework. I don't know why, but I was expecting something great from issue 50. I should have known better. I never thought I would enjoy reading Superman over Batman every week, which Man of Steel has been great.
Yes, it has.
Really looking forward to Superman number 1. It's just so disappointing. That's all I can say. It also angers me. I hope we don't have to put up with this until issue number 100. King is probably a great writer, but not for Batman. Brent Ellenberg.
Is Mr. Miracle's really good?
So,
Kid, we're on the same page. I've been saying this for months.
there's your person that we were talking about when we were saying a lot of people felt a little cheated by Batman number 50, and there it is from Brent. Thanks, Brent.
Yeah, I can't contest. I get why people would be upset with this and everything else. Personally, I got a lot of enjoyment out of this book, but not necessarily because I think it was a great story or anything. It's mostly because of that artwork and a couple of character moments. So, yeah.
Yeah, so, well, we got to hear the other side. I mean, we're kind of on Brent's side. I love what he said about how many times do we have to watch two characters side by side doing the same thing? Dude, so true.
I put my hand up in the hallelujah pose the minute he said that.
So true. Just another trick that he just can't get away from.
But hey, the good news is I read through that Catwoman #1, and spoilers, I don't think she says meow at any point in that book.
Well, nice. Anyway, we got one more thing to listen to, because if you listen to the last episode, we've set up a Holy BatCast voicemail. So if you'd like to actually speak your questions and like us to hear your voice, you can call us at 323-366-9246. And we got our very first voicemail, Jamie.
We did.
Are you excited?
Sure.
Guess who it's from?
Brendan?
No,
Okay.
but it should.
They don't have phones in Australia yet. I forgot.
No, we're actually getting a letter via kangaroo. No, it is from Jordan Valdez.
You don't say.
Yeah, shocker.
Does anybody have him on suicide watch currently?
Apparently he liked it because, I don't know.
He ain't going to say a bad word about Tom King, even if it is horrible. So
Exactly. So, yeah, let's check in and see what Jordan had to say.
Hey, Andy, Jamie, Brendan, whoever else is on the show. This is Bat Jordan Valdez calling in. First off, I want to give a big congratulations on reaching 1 million downloads. That is a huge milestone, and that's awesome. So I wanted to talk about a couple of things. One of which is, first of all, I know I'm in the minority here, but as much as I love the original BTAS designs, I actually prefer the new Batman Adventures designs. I like the sleeker, more streamlined designs and the sleeker animation style. So I actually prefer the new Batman Adventures style, and it's Rhino is the other one of the ventriloquist and Scarface's henchmen. So I've always loved Muggsy and Rhino, especially from my favorite animated series, The Batman. They were in 2 episodes of that, and so I've always loved them as henchmen. Also, I wanted to respond to Tim's question about best or most memorable Crime Alley flashbacks or Bruce revisiting it. I totally second all the ones that you threw out. I also wanted to throw in the very emotional moment from the first Batman TMNT comic crossover, where Batman takes Raphael to Crime Alley. I thought that was really emotional and great, and coincidentally, you brought up Raphael in passing on the last episode, so there's a coincidence there. And then also I was going to bring up from the Batman episode, The Big Chill. It's the Mr. Freeze episode from season 1 of The Batman, so bringing up my favorite animated series there. Come on, Brendan, keep pushing for you guys to review it, please. I would love that. But yeah, there's a great flashback to it there. And then also in the recent Walmart Batman Giant #1, the new Walmart exclusive 100-page comics, there were actually 2 stories in that featured, coincidentally, because I was reading it right after listening to your episode, that featured Batman revisiting Crime Alley. One of them was an original story by Jimmy Palmiotti in that book, where he's investigating a case and has to go to the Monarch Theater. And then the other one is a scene where it's actually, the other one is because they reprinted Hush in it. And so, or the first issue of Hush in this Batman Giant. And so it's the first issue of Hush when Hush cuts Batman's grapnel gun and he falls into Crime Alley. So I thought I'd mention those. I just want to say, as I'm recording this, it is July 2nd, so 2 days before the Batcat wedding. I know not everyone shares my excitement for it, but I'm certainly extremely excited, and I just want to say Batcat forever from the first kiss to the last. Keep up the Batastic work, guys. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks, Jordan. thanks for chiming in. I think you hit a lot of stuff there.
You tripped up on that, Jordan. I know you said Batcat forever, but apparently it's only Batcat until number 50. So.
Oh man. Yeah. So, Rhino, thanks for that. I forgot his name. I did not know that Muggsy and Rhino showed up in other media. I thought they were like one-off characters, so that is interesting. And yeah, some other good Crime Alley moments. And some people do prefer the new Batman Adventures. It's funny, when that first happened, the design change, I feel like my circle of friends liked the new ones better, and I was the only one who didn't like it. And now I feel like, now that time has, a little bit of time has changed, that I feel like more people have kind of come over to my side of not liking the redesigns. But yeah, I guess some people have to prefer those. So thank you for sharing that. Jamie, anything in there that you wanted to comment on?
I think Batman and Batgirl looked fine in that episode that I watched today, but Nightwing's design, Catwoman's design, I wasn't. I mean, there's nothing like blah about them, but I prefer the previous designs on those.
Yeah, I think pretty much over, like, some of the new designs I don't mind, but I think pretty much prefer the original design across the board. Yeah. But some of the redesigns bother me less than others. Like you're right. Like, Batman still looks good. I prefer the older one because I like the blue. Batgirl looks good. The Catwoman one doesn't totally bother me. It's
much more leaning toward the Michelle Pfeiffer look than the classic comic Catwoman look. Yeah,
for sure. But anyway, thanks. Our very first voicemail. Good to know it works. Yay! So, if you would like to send a message, a voicemail to us, you can, again, send that to 323-366-9246. It doesn't have to be as long as Jordan's. I appreciate the thoroughness of it.
That boy is so enthusiastic about life.
He's got a lot to say.
He does.
But anyway, that's where we're going to close the Wayne Manor Mailbox. If you've got an email to send us, send that to holybatcast@rf4rm.com. But that's where we're going to wrap up this episode, our special wedding episode of Holy BatCast, which means I think now we all need to do like the chicken dance or the electric slide.
Chicken dance? Wow, that's a nice German Midwestern thing you just pulled out of your butt there.
Yeah, most weddings have a chicken dance, I feel like.
Do they?
Still?
Maybe.
I mean, anyway. But anyway, Jamie, thanks for returning from the dead for an afternoon.
I ain't dead, I'm just quiet.
It's good to have you back. So if you want to keep up with Jamie...
you can't.
You just keep tuning into Holy BatCast.
There you go. Look,
and you will hear him.
Look for me where fine podcasts are sold.
Yes, and occasionally on Real Fans for Real Movies, and occasionally on Please Rewind. He'll pop up when he's alive. But anyway, you know where to find me, and thank you as always for downloading the show. Please do subscribe to the show on iTunes, and please rate and review us on iTunes. It's been a little while since we've gotten a new review, so now's the time if you haven't done it yet. Also, as Michael Keaton's Batman says, I want you to tell all your friends about me. Go to holybatcast.com and follow us, Holy BatCast, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. But that'll do it for this episode. On behalf of Jamie, I've been your host, Andy DiGenova. We'll see you next time. Same bat time, same bat channel. This show is a proud part of the Real Fans Podcast Network. You can sample all the shows that are part of the network at rf4rm.com. Those shows include Real Fans for Real Movies, the original show that looks back at films past and present. There's also Holy BatCast, all about Batman and the DC Universe. There's Disorder, every Disney film that looks back at every Disney animated feature in order. There's Taking the Bullet that looks at bad movies so you don't have to watch them. There's Please Rewind, the RF for RM retro show that looks back at older movies. And finally, there's Grim Grinning Hosts, a salute to all pop culture, but mostly theme parks. Again, you can check out all these shows at rf4rm.com or search for them by name wherever you get your podcasts.
Holy BatCast is brought to you by Real Fans for Real Movies. Remember, the thoughts and opinions shared by the participants are theirs and theirs alone, and do not represent the companies or organizations they happen to work for.
I didn't need...
A gift.
You said it.